Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the greatest and most attractive characters ever thought up. He can run at sound speed, take out enemies in a flash, and best of all, he's blue-colored and knows how to handle the females. Speaking of females, Sonic
what the
Universe
fuck
might
is
also
that?
be classified as chick heaven because it's such a mess
What the
of
hell are you doing in here?
women that it'll
I'm
make
working
you
on a
love
video.
the franchise even more.
Oh, that's cool. Can I join?
And since
Yeah, sure.
Valentine's Day is around the corner, I've been
Welcome to 30 for 30. I'm your host, Aiden of Blue Couch Productions, and on this show, I'm attempting to review 30 games in 30 days. For more on the show's concept, be sure to watch the Altered Beast episode before this one, and then come on back. But yeah, today's a huge episode. We're finally talking about Sonic the Hedgehog. I assume this is going to be one of the most popular episodes of 30 for 30, and for good reason. I myself was kind of caught off guard by how long it took us to get to Sonic. I assume it just launched with the Genesis, but no, it took 2 whole years, 1991, until Sonic finally arrived. The story of how Sonic came to be is super fascinating to me because it's also the story of how Sega finally found its identity. Here was a game with all Sega's core attributes, things that represented Sega, and when the game finally released and was a huge success, it put Sega on the map forever and they were synonymous with video games as a result. But of course, it didn't start out that way. In fact, it started pretty small, with an internal company competition to create a new mascot character to rival Nintendo's Mario. And rivaling Mario is pretty tough, even next to impossible at this point in time. You see, Mario had already had a string of successful games, making a ton of money. He was a superstar in the video game world, and he was even as recognizable as Mickey Mouse. And no, I'm not kidding there. A lot of kids knew Mario more than they did Mickey Mouse. That's absolutely incredible. Anytime a company had even tried to take a little bit of Mario's pie, they crashed and burned immediately, either not having the same sales success or not doing as well in the gameplay department. How would Sega even be able to differentiate themselves in the first place? Well, they tried with a bunch of different pitches. The first pitch was of a rabbit character whose ears could grasp onto objects and swing around. They liked the idea, but when they tried to implement it into the game, it was too technically complex. The next pitch was of a fat scientist character with a huge mustache, but Sega thought he wasn't really cool and he wouldn't catch on with American audiences. A breakthrough finally arrived when programmer Yuji Naka developed a game engine that allowed sprites to move super fast across the screen. The mascots then kind of shifted into characters that can move super fast and roll into a ball. The final design that we ended up getting for Sonic the Hedgehog was developed by Naoto Oshima, who I hope I pronounced his name right, and his inspiration came from a bajillion different places. Sonic's iconic blue color came from the Sega logo. His shoes came from Michael Jackson's Bad album. What about the color of the shoes? That came from Santa Claus, because of course, kids like Santa. And finally, Sonic's attitude, the thing most people know him for, well, that actually came from Bill Clinton. I'm not joking. They said that they used Bill Clinton's snarky, go-get-em attitude as inspiration for Sonic's own attitude. It's just kind of crazy because that's the landmark feature of Sonic's design. The game was obviously a huge success. It sold a ton, marketing used Sonic to its fullest, emphasizing his speed and his attitude. And I think the most brilliant part about Sonic's development as a whole is that Sega was able to create a character that was the polar opposite of Mario. Mario was red, Sonic was blue. Mario was cute, Sonic was cool. Mario was about platforming, Sonic was about speed and momentum. It worked out perfectly for Sega across the board, and it also shifted Sega's strategy with the Genesis. No longer were they focusing on just working on arcade ports, but now they were shifting to making their own original ideas, making games that could compete with Nintendo rather than just trying to use the success of the arcade. Sega ended up getting 65% of the video game market share due to the success of Sonic, and it pretty much created the classic video game console wars that we know today. Sonic's impact on the gaming industry is huge. He was super popular in the 90s, and he's super popular now. Everybody talks about Sonic all the time, and despite the quality of the games, there's just sort of a love and admiration for it. I love and admire the story myself. I love watching how Sonic was made in these weird times and how he came together despite all the odds. It's a story of ingenuity, creativity, and Sega finally finding its identity for the Genesis and themselves is great. But while all that is touching and all, we still have a game to review. Does Sonic 1 even hold up in the first place? Or is it just really a proof of concept? Let's go ahead and review the game in a critical light, but first, we gotta listen to a message from our sponsor.
Now that's way past cool. Fuck. It took a lot out of me. You know what else is way past cool? The sponsor for today's video, another YouTube podcast. Do you want lightning quick YouTube advice? Well, maybe go to a different podcast because this takes like an hour. But the advice is still good at least. It's informative, it's personal, and it has actionable advice that can help your channel grow, no matter at what size you're at. We talk about the theory side of YouTube, like quality versus quantity, as well as the technical side, what equipment to buy, how to make thumbnails, best editing practices. You got the whole shebang right there.
And hey, we're recording our final episode this month on YouTube.
But it's also available It's also available on a majority of all podcast platforms. Yay! I'll link down the YouTube channel below, but if you just search another YouTube podcast, chances are you'll find it. And you should check it out. It stars me, Aiden of Blue Catch Productions, and my good friend, Zack Snyder of Your Everyday Nerd. So, if you want to be cool like me and Sonic, go check it out. Link in the description below. Alright, now, I gotta go fast, so smell you later, losers.
Welcome back to 30 for 30, everybody. In the first part, we talked about Sonic's amazing development history, and now in the second part, I want to review the game that started it all. Let's take a look at Sonic the Hedgehog. So how does Sonic the Hedgehog exactly work? Well, looking at the box art here, we can kind of get a couple of clues. Of course, we have Sonic here with this big smile. Sega really wanted to push his attitude in the marketing. And we also have a couple of hints as to how the levels are actually going to work. We have a loop-de-loop right here, some rings, some spikes, and then taking a look at the back, we have, oh, that loop again, a couple of fire and maybe some puzzle-solving elements. Really, Sonic 1 is a mix of all these elements and a couple more. Let's start first with the plot, though. You play as Sonic the Hedgehog, moving from left to right, stopping badniks and saving the animal buddies from the evil Dr. Robotnik. You remember that fat scientist that Sega pitched as the mascot in the first part? Well, yeah, they actually ended up repurposing him as the villain, and I think that works far better. Dr. Robotnik has always been one of my favorite villain designs, and I'm so happy they were finally able to use them here. But let's take plot out of the way now and focus on presentation, and man, this is a place where Sonic 1 excels. We've talked about a lot of games on 30 for 30 that are pretty and look nice, but Sonic takes it to a whole new level with its own art style that I think is immediately established in Sonic 1 and has carried its through line throughout the entire franchise. Checkerboard patterns on Green Hill Zone, that fake plastic palm tree that always has a little bit of shine on it, those classic blue skies, the water, the bright colors. Sonic 1 looks flat out gorgeous. You can tell this wasn't an arcade port and that they were using every little bit of the Genesis's power to display a game that looked beautiful and beat the shit out of Mario and what he was doing in his 8-bit entries, and I think it absolutely succeeded in that aspect. It also wouldn't be a Sonic review if we didn't talk about the music. This is one of Sonic's key attributes, and yeah, it's pretty good here. The Sonic 1 soundtrack isn't my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but there's enough bops that I think kind of make it structurally whole. Green Hill Zone is, of course, amazing, but one track that I don't hear not nearly enough praise for is Robotnik's theme. It has a little bit of that terror and ominous factor that really adds tension to the overall boss fight. It's really cool. So yeah, the presentation's on point. I love the characters, the world, the aesthetic of the game, but now we can go ahead and shift our focus to gameplay. There's a couple of basic mechanics to how Sonic the Hedgehog works compared to other platforming characters like Mario. The first of which is that speed. Sonic starts out at a normal walk, but as you continue to move along faster and faster, he'll build speed up until the point where you can go super fast and even roll into a ball to take down enemies. There's no spin dash here, so you can't automatically go into the ball right when you want to. You have to have enough speed in order to do it. Otherwise, you'll just sort of duck on the ground. But hey, it gets the job done, at least for this first early game. Another basic mechanic to how Sonic works are the rings. Rings are Sonic's lifeblood. As long as you hold on to them, you can get hit as many times as you want and not die. But if you lose your rings and you get hit without them on you, well then you die. 3 lives and then it's a game over. There's no real way to get continues except for one way I found that I'll talk about later. But yeah, that's pretty much how it works. The last basic Sonic design mechanic is that the stages are built up into acts. Mario just kind of changes it level to level, whereas Sonic has the same theme that's used for 3 stages or acts. There's always Green Hill Zone Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Typically, Act 3 has the boss fights of the game, and you know what? While we're here, let's go ahead and talk about boss fights. They're a cakewalk, really. Dr. Robotnik is never threatening in any of these encounters I found. This first one, for example, oh no, he has a big ball and chain, but simply hit him a couple of times and you're on your way, and he's immediately dead. He's like, "Fuck you, Sonic! Why'd you have to do this to my epic machine, bro?" I just kind of picture him sounding like a neckbeard. I don't know why, but I find it to be hilarious. None of the other bosses really compare in terms of difficulty at all, and that would kind of be a thing that continued throughout the series, at least with Sonic 2 and Sonic CD. But all those mechanics are fine. They wouldn't really work, though, unless they had good levels on top of that, and there's a couple of key attributes that make for good Sonic level design. The first mechanic of any good Sonic level is that speed and momentum. That's what these loops here are for. As you continue to run around the stage, you get speed, and that speed allows you to have fun and, bring out those classic Sonic moments. But that's only the first part. The next part, part number 2, is that Sonic has big explorative levels. Mario is linear. He moves from left to right. Sonic, on the other hand, is all about big, open exploration levels with a ton of different pathways. There's the top pathway, which skilled players will go to right away, and it's the quickest way through a level. Then you have the normal playthrough path, where most players will go. And then finally, the bottom path, which is where bad players end up going. If you fall down here, this is typically the worst place to be, as there's spikes, hazards, and constant things getting in the way and ruining your life as a whole. The last element, though, to good Sonic level design, and the one that's probably the most slept on, is having good enemy placement. You see, Sonic is moving so fast through a lot of these stages that very rarely is he going to be able to see what's coming up ahead of him, so it's up to Sega to devise enemies that you can actually react to, that you can spot and make a decision on. Typically quick decisions, but decisions nonetheless. Bad enemy placement in this regard is having things like spikes, bottomless pits, and shit that you're not going to be able to react to at all, no matter how many times you've played the game. These are the moments where you get frustrated at the designers and go, how was I supposed to avoid that? That's bad enemy placement. You have to kind of place them in a way where it's both challenging and actually fair, and so Sega has tried a bunch of different ways to do that. I bring you all 3 of these key level design principles because Green Hill Zone, the first stage in Sonic 1, is a masterwork of all of these. It has 3 classic paths that are fun to explore and have great items and rewards to get. The enemy placement is fun, you can dodge them pretty easily if you want to, and the loops are iconic. They allow you to get the most speed, and it's the easiest point at which to grab momentum. Green Hill Zone, though, is just a blast from beginning to end. I love it all the way through. I have a ton of fun with it, and the Robotnik fight at the end is a cool way to top it off. The big fault with Sonic 1, and the thing that makes the game not fun at all, is unfortunately the rest of the levels outside Green Hill Zone suck. And I mean almost all of them are stinkers. The worst offender, in my opinion, is Marble Hill Zone. This is a stage that goes completely against the principles that Green Hill Zone established. In Marble Hill, there's no way to explore. It's a linear track from beginning to end. You're cramped in and there's not many opportunities to go out of your way and find alternate things. It plays almost as much like a Mario game, which is a death sentence for Sonic fans. Bad enemy placement? Well, we got a ton of that here in Marble Hill as well. Spikes that you can't see, crushing things that can clamp down on you, enemies that you're not going to see, fireballs, fire pillars that come down on you. The difficulty is immediately ramped up and nowhere near as fun as it was in Green Hill. And the speed sections, yeah, good luck. There's no loops in here. You're not going to find any place to go fast throughout the stage. In fact, the majority of it is spent on little blocks surfing through lava at a very slow pace. Whereas Green Hill Zone can take anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to complete, Marble Hill, even when you know what you're doing, can take 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And again, that's a death sentence here. You don't want stages that overstay their welcome. It's at this point where I realized that the 3-act structure that Sonic has, and no, I'm not using that in a film sense, I mean in like a level design sense. Having 3 acts of one stage can kind of suck because if you hate the stage, you have to play 3 of them as a result. And by the time you even get out of Marble Hill Zone, you won't even be happy that Spring Yard is a thing because all your lives will be gone. You'll end up dying and losing. Thankfully, there are the special stages, which do kind of bring a little bit of variety to the table. In these special stages, you have these trippy, almost psychedelic backgrounds, and you're moving all sorts of different directions as it turns, and your goal is to get the Chaos Emerald. I found if you actually complete these special stages and get the Chaos Emerald, that's how you get continues. So don't do the special stages for the Chaos Emeralds. There's no Supersonic or anything, I don't think. But do them for the continues, because that's how you can get through the game a lot quicker and have a lot more lives in case Marble Hill ends up fucking your shit up. Later Sonic games would kind of patch up the level design and make it a bit more fun and intuitive and have a bit of a natural difficulty rather than Sonic's ones, hey, we're super fun and then immediately difficult right away. I just don't know what to rate this game as a whole. I think I need a little bit more time to think about it. So, you know what? We're gonna toss it over to a friend of mine, Jay the Zoomster, our resident Sonic the Hedgehog expert, and go ahead and listen to his thoughts about the game. Maybe after listening to them, I'll be able to form my own opinion about how I want to rate the game. So, go ahead, Jay. Take it away.
Personally, I think the first Sonic the Hedgehog is a very, very mediocre platformer and really not the best indication for what the series would end up doing further. Maybe if you're a Sonic hater, you think if the first game is bad, probably they're all bad, but I promise it gets better in directly the next game. The first Sonic really just suffers from a gigantic difficulty spike that comes throughout the game and you just really lose all of the fun that you might have had. The game's levels also really want you to go fast without being designed for going fast. There's a ton of stupid traps, enemy placement that literally punish you for going as fast as the game wants you to go. It's just weird, it's bizarre, and I really wish that it was a better experience because I like playing Sonic 2, I even like playing Sonic 3, but I cannot bring myself to play the first Sonic again.
Wow, thank you for all those thoughts. I appreciate you being on the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to that as well. Kind of getting a bit of a second take on 30 for 30 is something fascinating, I think. But after listening to Jay's thoughts and really kind of coming to my own conclusions about what I think of the game, Sonic the Hedgehog for me is just kind of a game that's sort of stuck between these two extremes. On the one end, it's a gorgeous game. The characters, the music, the world, I love it all to death. The mechanics are solid even though they would later be improved upon, but they're good enough for this first game. Really, the only major sticking point I have are the level designs. The majority of them are unplayable, and I just think they're not as fun. Sonic 1 to me feels like a proof of concept, like they were developing the idea and pitching this game to the public and saying, hey, you want more of this? Go ahead and buy this first game. And people did, thankfully, and the sequels did improve on this, but it just means that going back to play Sonic 1 in 2020 is a little bit of a headache. That's why my final rating for the game is 2.5 stars. It's got a lot of positives going for it, but the level design is Sonic's biggest flaw. But yeah, yeah, that'll be it. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Hope it was worth the wait, and I can't wait to tackle the sequels and the later games in the Sonic franchise on 30 for 30. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the video down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What'd you think about Jay's inclusion in the video? I'd love to read all those comments down below. And hey, if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. But above all else, I just hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Aiden of Blue Couch Productions, and I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of 30 for 30. Bye-bye, everybody.